There's about.
Yeah. Bravo! Bravo! Welcome back with another banger. Hit that like, sub it up, the react files. Hit that like, sub it up, the react files. Y'all feel me? Let's run it.
A good score brings benefits, but people with low scores lose rights. The cinema names and shames people considered untrustworthy, plastering their details, even their addresses, across big screens.
It's a matter of principle. Those people have to be condemned.
Those people aren't honest, so they have to pay the price.
It's only right to pay your debts. You have to blacklist those that don't.
The Supreme Court has created a blacklist for so-called bad citizens, those whose ratings have dropped to 0. On it are companies, but also 23 million people to date. Among them is this journalist Liu Hu. He got a little too close to uncovering corruption among high-profile party members. After being sued for defamation by the subject of a story he'd written, he was blacklisted. He only realized when he tried to buy a train ticket and was told he was banned from traveling.
That tells me I'm still on the blacklist.
Punished because he's been branded untrustworthy by the state.
Once you're blacklisted, you can no longer get a bank loan, start a business, buy an apartment, or even send your children to a private school.
Liu Hu is among a tiny minority of people who have dared to criticize the system, which some are calling a digital dictatorship.
I worry, because I think many people like me will be deprived of individual freedoms.
Yo, they put your business up on the screen at the movie theater. That's crazy. Shout out to Something's Up in PA and Begin to Ends. You can't even buy a train ticket. You're talking about walk it out. Damn.
This video is going viral on Twitter because this is in Brussels. It's a farmers' protest again. The farmers are still pissed because they're mandating that they feed their cows Boivar. You got to hear what's going on in freaking Europe, man. They're making them feed their cows a feed that the owner of Microsoft sponsors called Boivar that reduces the emissions from the cows farting, literally. But farmers are reporting their cows are dropping like flies being fed this stuff. They push the police barricade out of the way and they hose the government building with manure or liquid fricking sludge, whatever, from their farm. They don't mess around. You've seen them dump truckloads of hay and manure and everything in front of the building. Now they're spraying the whole thing. And when the farmers wake up and all the citizens get fed by the farmers, whose side do you think the citizens are going to be on? You know what happens if you don't feed your cows the Boivar feed? You get taxed out the yin-yang. You basically go bankrupt if you do not feed your cows. You know what? If you don't feed them this feed. Because what they say is, the cows are emitting too much emissions. That's causing the climate to change. And we're supposed to be hitting these climate targets. We need to reduce emissions by such and such percent. The only way to do that is if little ass Belgium over there in Europe feeds their not even that many million cows, probably not even a million freaking cows, Boivar. Meanwhile, China, with billions of cows, has no such policy at all. India, no cow fart policy. It's ridiculous. It's part of a plan. It's nothing to do with what they say it is. It's about control, and it's about this. That's what it's about, and you're naive and delusional and confused if you think otherwise. Now, they got more planned for us over here in North America with more GMO feed, probably Boivar. We know that they massively introduce antibiotics and all kinds of pharmaceuticals to the animals that are factory farmed in feedlots. It's totally toxic, and we've been eating this stuff our whole life. This is the importance of shopping local and organic, knowing where your meat's coming from, that it's pastured, organic pasture raised.
Shout out to Belgium and all the farmers taking a stand. Shout out to Shane Babs Truth for bringing this to the front of the congregation. It's like it takes out your livestock and it bankrupts you. Yeah, I'd be pissed too.
Solomon's temple. There's a story within the Talmud, and it talks about Solomon used this ancient technology to build a temple called the Shamir. This is weird. Preface, the Talmud is not recognized within Christianity. Historians do. But this Shamir, some speculate it's a worm. It is this green ray, a living creature whose gaze carves rock.
Whoa.
The Talmud talks about the story that God basically told Solomon, you're not allowed to use iron tools on the temple because these iron tools are also used in warfare.
Yeah.
This is Talmud, not the scripture. And then he was told the Shamir was given to Ashmadiah, the king of demons.
Medea?
Tyler Perry?
Or Ashmadiah, I think. Solomon's best warriors forced him to say where the Shamir is.
Wow.
And that's when they used the Shamir to build the temple.
Seems worse than iron.
And this is where it gets crazy. They believe that the Shamir was created before Adam and Eve.
So it was a tool being used by these demonic creatures.
Yeah, and
Got
we've
it.
talked about before all these ancient ruins, like in Peru and stuff. These rocks fit perfectly. Nothing could contain this Shamir except a lead box because it's the only thing that can contain radioactive material.
Weird.
And then after the temple was built, somehow the Shamir just disappeared.
Well, it's still out there.
Note, this was not random, and our country is on a timer, as everything we are being told right now is a complete lie, and we need to prepare for our last war. People were terrified after the haunting DC incident with suspect named Ramanullah Lakanwal is the start of our last battle, as the administration is using Afghan immigrants entering the country as the reason why DC was hit, and yes, they're even using that as the reason to initiate World War III, with experts saying this war will not be survivable. Haunting reports are showing Ramanullah has a CIA ID, was vetted multiple times before entering the US, and was given asylum by the administration years prior to what happened in DC. But it gets worse as reports from Google Trends show the suspect's name was searched 16 times in New York State 2 days prior to the incident, 4 searches in Virginia 3 days prior, and 12 times in DC just several hours prior. And those are all US official hubs. But many are saying these are all just coincidences.
Yo, what are the odds of that? Shout out to Dave Dissy doing the research. That's some real gumshoe work now.
Make sure you smash that like, subscribe, and ring the notification bell to make sure you're up to code. It's the React Files.
Okay, people have just found out why we actually get nightmares. When you're dreaming about falling, being chased, dying, or anything else horrible that happens in a nightmare, there is actually a very, very smart part of your brain that is working here, and it's definitely not what you think it is. Think of it like your brain is running a survival simulation. You're basically playing a video game. Well, I don't really want to in the middle of the night. It's testing your reaction to fear, danger, and stress all while you sleep to basically level up your body in a way. I think mine's like Prestige 3. And it does this testing various situations with you so that you're better prepared when you're awake. Now I know, this sounds insane. You're like, no, that's just absolute bullshit. Like, why would they do that? But no, it is true. It is your primal survival instincts kicking in. Like, our brain has evolved over thousands of years, but we're still the same as these Donnies. I mean, it's literally an ancient defense mechanism. Your brain rehearsing the worst case scenarios ever, so if anything happens, you're more prepared for it. And as I say, this would have happened back in these days where these Donnies would have been dreaming about tigers chasing them or something coming and eating them, so that when that did genuinely happen, they were actually prepared for it and could survive.
So when we have nightmares, it's actually a survivor simulator? Shout out to It's Matt W01. That's crazy.
Peace. We're going to take a look at the construction of these commercial planes. And let's just see if maybe, just maybe, they're missing something. Oh, I got they ass this time.
The first flight happens. Even long before the first rivet is set, a team of thousands of engineers and designers spend years developing the design for both the aircraft and how it'll be manufactured. They have to take into account the desired passenger capacity, the range and speed of the plane, passenger comfort, requirements for landing and navigating airports, flight controls, fuel efficiency, how and where materials and parts will be sourced and produced, and a million and sundry other details. Over the course of the design, engineers use computer simulations and wind tunnel models to test the aerodynamics of the aircraft in its takeoff, cruising, and landing configurations, and even use scale model engines powered by compressed air to understand the wing-engine interaction. Fluid dynamics is freaking complicated. All of the various systems have to be independently tested. The wing flaps and the landing gear deployment and the engines, and so on. They even shoot several dead ducks into the engine at high speed to make sure it can continue to provide thrust if it encounters a flock of birds. Once a plane is designed, the parts, all 2.65 million of them, have to be manufactured and assembled, some by Airbus itself, and many, like the engines and landing gear, by outside contractors. In the case of the A350 aircraft, the wing tops and bottoms are made in an additive process using carbon fiber-infused resinous tape, which is then cured in a massive oven until it becomes stronger and lighter than steel. Let me say that again.
That is going to be an airplane wing, made out of tape.
The wing boxes are assembled and fitted with electrical, hydraulic, and fuel systems, painted, and then the flaps, slats, and ailerons, the things they use to steer, are added. The ginormous tail fin is constructed in a similar fashion. The fuselage, and rear pressure bulkhead are built separately, again out of carbon fiber composite materials, and are wired and outfitted with instrumentation and hydraulics. The nose of the aircraft is added, and then all the parts built off-site are flown by a special and hilarious-looking airplane part carrying airplane to the final assembly line, where in a single stupendously massive hangar, the fuselage pieces are fastened together, the wings are connected, landing gear installed, auxiliary power unit put in place, vertical stabilizer and horizontal tailplane are attached, seats and ventilation and cabin and cockpit interiors are installed, etc. Finally, at the very end, it's time for the engines. They're the most expensive part, so they're put on last. The plane then undergoes in-flight testing to make sure all the systems are working as intended. When a new aircraft is being developed, the first few planes built are covered with sensors and tested extensively to the range of their limits. Cold weather, hot weather, high altitude, water on the runway, tail scraping on low-speed takeoff, wing bending strength, etc. And in addition to this extensive prototype testing, every single plane that comes off the assembly line is taken on its own test flights. Once the test pilots and test flight engineers are happy, we're done. The plane heads out onto the runway for delivery to an airline somewhere around the world.
So straight out the gate, if you notice, the components are made in multiple different locations, and then they all come together at the end. This means just like when you have different jurisdictions where you have a serial killer hopping from state to state to state to state, and the police in Pennsylvania don't know what's happening with the victims in Missouri. Well, it's the same exact thing when they're building this plane. Like somebody who works on the wing, who works on this part, doesn't know anything about the engine, or what the guy that's doing this working on the fuselage is working on the... So they're basically separated. But let's go a step further. Let's just take a look here, because once again, there's supposed to be thousands and thousands and thousands of gallons of fuel in here. Look at it. There's a wire going across right there. You can see all the components right here. They're not even done yet. There's going to be more wires and more gadgets. There's more pipes and hydraulics, because remember, this wing here, it has to open, and the flaps and everything. You just saw them tell you about designing it. They didn't talk about any fuel tanks going in these wings. Just take a look. Y'all know me, I'm coming with my receipts, man. Take a look. Inside the wing, I keep telling people, just pull up. Pull up on me. If there's fuel in the wing, just pull up and show me. I got a whole post right here on my page asking if anybody on planet Earth can find an aircraft mechanic, an aircraft tech, a refueling guy, anybody with proof of images of fuel tanks, and I will send you $100 right now. Do you know that post is sitting there dry? I still got my bread on me? Why? What? This is easy. We all got smartphones, right? I would have shut this guy up by now. I would have been like, yo, take that hose, pump this fuel out. We want to show this dude there's really thousands and thousands of gallons of fuel in these wings. I'm just trying to expose these fools. Yeah, y'all do all this stuff about asking questions. How about you just look at the simple... There is 8 billion people on the planet. Y'all seen my series already. I done did 8-part, multiple part series. Everybody has a story. I don't have stories. I have videos. I have proof. I have specs. Where are yours? I'm out in the field. I'm showing y'all planes with the wings open and that. Where are yours? Where are your receipts? This is them right here, loading all of these wires into the wing. Where is the fuel going? You're loading all these wires into this wing. Where are the fuel bladders? Oh, we're testing the wing upside down. We're flapping this. There's no fuel tanks in here. If you're stress testing this wing, because it's going to be going up and down, it's going to be going up and down with thousands of gallons of fuel in here. This shouldn't be dry. You should be stress testing this wing with fluid in it. Hey, if you're an engine, anybody out there agree? If you're telling us there's thousands of gallons of fuel in the wing, it should be stress tested with liquid in it. There's no liquid in that wing. It's dry. There's no fucking fuel in it. That is common sense. I don't need to go to MIT to figure that out. They're not stress testing this with any liquid in it. Then they said the engine, we're going to test the engine using what? Compressed air? Y'all keep asking, well, what is it? Compressed air, goddammit. They're testing the engine with compressed air. Why?
Compressed air to understand the wing-engine interaction. Fluid powered by compressed air to understand the wing-engine interaction. Fluid powered by compressed air to understand the wing-engine interaction. Fluid powered by compressed air to understand the wing-engine interaction.
Powered by compressed air. You heard it yourself. That's what they're testing the engines with. Why? Because that's what they're going to be using. That's what they're powered by. And just to wrap this up, the pressure alone to refuel this plane fast enough with as much fuel as they say in here, the pressure alone would blow right through this fucking wing. Right through that. Look. If he's here, there's nothing in here. The pressure would just blow right through the top. Let's just stop with the bullshit. They're not pumping fuel into this wing. They recharge these electric planes. No gas. This is a lie. But when the mind's
even if you are not ready for the day.
That's the first time I've ever seen the inside of a wing to a plane. Shout outs to Piper Miller, aka Damian Michaels. He been on their neck when it comes to these airplanes and not being powered by fuel. My whole thing is if those wings are wrapped with wires inside of them, wouldn't adding fuel become a fire hazard? That's a big question right there in itself.
Would you believe me if I told you that the moon isn't a solid rock in outer space, but it's actually some sort of projection being reflected or concentrated off of our firmament? Now, all you have to do is go look at the moon at night, and you can see that it's giving off its own light source. It's pretty obvious, because if it's nighttime and the sun's light isn't reaching you, how is it reflecting off of the moon? That doesn't make any sense. On top of that, go watch Vibes of Cosmos on YouTube, and he'll literally show you that you can fit the entire United Nations flat Earth map in one section of the moon. But that means that there's more lands beyond the ice wall. So what this right here is showing how the magnetic north shifts by 30 degrees every 2,160 years around the true geographical north. Go look it up. There's a geographical and there's a magnetic north. Well, think about all of the times that Earth was in an ice age or the Younger Dryas period. The peak of the ice age was like 20,000 years ago. Well, the sun and moon were somewhere around there. And then it was somewhere closer to where we are in the Younger Dryas, where it wasn't as cold. And in 25,920 years, I believe, the magnetic pole will be right where it is now. So every 2,160 years, it's shifting with the astrological age that we're in. So the magnetic pole is literally shifting with our astrological ages, which is why every 2,000 years, there's massive amounts of climate change. Well, yeah, the climate's always changing. And were you paying attention to those pictures? How you can see a star through the moon? How could that be possible? Why would Islam have a flag of a star being seen through the moon? If it's all just made up BS and it's a rock in outer space. Yeah, this is real. This is real, guys. This video was made for entertainment purposes only.
He's definitely onto something. There's a lot of weird coincidences when it comes to that moon. Shout out to Holistic Health Nut 33. Been hearing these theories a lot lately. Definitely makes me wonder.
In 1929, the Graf Zeppelin embarked on a famous 5,000-mile long trip in a record-breaking 81 hours. Let's take a tour of its beautiful interior on its leg to Rio.
I'm not sure if you've ever heard of this before, but Gnostics believe that you're trapped in a false reality created by a blind, insane God, and that the real divine realm exists completely outside of this universe. This is the concept of the pleroma, and it's one of the most radical cosmologies in Western spirituality because it flips everything upside down. The material world isn't a divine creation to be celebrated, it's a cosmic prison to escape from. So, what is the pleroma? Well, in Gnostic texts, the pleroma means fullness. It's the totality of the true divine realm where the actual God exists. Not the God of the Old Testament, but the true, unknowable source beyond all conception. The pleroma is described as an infinite realm of pure light, consciousness, and divine emanations called aeons, eternal beings that exist in perfect harmony. Now here's where it gets dark. Our physical universe is not part of the pleroma. According to Gnostic mythology, the material world was created by a mistake. One of the ions, Sophia, whose name means wisdom, acted without her divine consort and accidentally brought forth a deformed, ignorant entity called the Demiurge. Now this being didn't know that the true God existed. It thought it was God. And in its arrogance and ignorance, the Demiurge created the material universe. Earth, matter, physical bodies, time, and death. Now Gnostics identified the Demiurge with Yahweh, the God of the Old Testament, that jealous, wrathful deity who demands worship and punishes humanity. But they say that's not the real God. That's the blind creator who trapped divine sparks of consciousness in physical bodies and convinced them that this prison is paradise. But here's the secret. Buried inside every human being is a fragment of the pleroma, a spark of divine light that fell from the true realm and got trapped in matter. Now most people don't even know it's there. They're asleep, hypnotized by the material world, worshipping the false god who imprisoned them. Gnosis means knowledge, specifically the direct experiential knowledge that you are not your body, you're not your ego, and you are not this limited physical existence. You are a fragment of the infinite pleroma, and awakening to that reality is the only way to escape. Now Gnostic texts describe the pleroma in incredibly detailed ways. It's structured as layers of ions arranged in pairs called syzygies, divine masculine and feminine principles in perfect union. Now at the very center is the monad, the absolute unknowable source. Radiating outward are ions with names like Barbello, Autogenes, and Christos, and each one is an aspect of divine consciousness. Now the boundary between the pleroma and the false material universe is called the veil, or the limit. The Demiurge and its archons, which are the rulers of this world, guard the boundary. They don't want souls escaping back to the pleroma because they feed on human suffering, ignorance, and worship. They're described as parasitic entities that keep humanity locked in cycles of reincarnation, forgetting who they really are with each new birth. But Gnostics taught there were ways to cross the veil, secret teachings, passwords, and spiritual practices that could awaken the divine spark. And when you achieve true gnosis, you would see through the illusion of matter, recognize the Demiurge as false, and at death, your soul would ascend through the planetary spheres, right past the...
So, pretty much this is the stuff that 607 Unc be talking about. He just be looking crazy, sitting there with that cup and all that. So this is the articulated version. Shout outs to Bladen.k, because now I can understand what 607 Unc is talking about on his theory. Very interesting stuff right here, for sure. Like Tupac said, his greatest fear was reincarnation. Wow.
What's up with the Anunnaki? I'm about to tell you a story so true it repeats on every level of reality. Three-Eye Atlas, aliens, the gods. If you don't want to be on the hook for this information, you better scroll. What are you doing to us, right? The wounds of a friend are faithful. Richard Dawkins says we are all atheists about most of the gods that humanity has ever believed in. Some of us just go one god further. You got a bunch of mice in your pockets, sir? While modern academia maintains that this is man's feeble attempt to explain the natural forces he experiences in life, I'd say what difference does that actually make? The forces are real, right? But they're not intelligent and personified, you might say. Men did this, did we? You sure about that? The whole story here from the ancient Sumerians, the first civilization, they claim that these immortal beings came from the heavens and taught them everything. about civilization. Well, that's preposterous, academia says. Not coincides directly with how history began after such a long period of prehistory. Just all of a sudden, like. And that first civilization, Sumer, made attempts, no matter how feeble they be. They could barely write. They were scratching cuneiform on clay tablets and baking it in the oven, bro. They didn't even have paper. This was their attempt to explain how mankind and civilization began. They have wings, they look like angels. Funny you should mention that. Most people think we can't see heaven at all and that angels are invisible. And the fact that people so easily reject these ideas, though they be so obvious and simple, would hurt my feelings if I had any left on the subject. We understand that bacteria are life forms so small that we can't see them with our eyes, except we use an instrument to see them for us. Why is it so hard to understand that stars are life forms in heaven, unimaginably larger than we are? You would have to be on the surface of a star to truly understand its immensity, at which point you could no longer properly comprehend it. All things being relative anyway. We can believe that bacteria are life forms, but not that stars are alive. I maintain that the evidence of life is metabolism, and that metabolism is evidence of consciousness, and that magnetic fields are evidence of metabolism. Now, the fact that stars are life forms is rejected because they don't eat or procreate. I would argue that immortal life forms don't have to eat, they're immortal. How does this make sense according to the laws of physics? Well, their metabolism is inherent. The fuel that they need to consume, they already have. They don't have to gather it from outside sources like we do down here on Earth where things die and are not immortal. What need is there to pass on your progeny if you're immortal? The Bible says angels neither marry nor are they given in marriage, and we do observe this of the stars. And we use it to disqualify them that they are alive when it's really the other way around. They're more alive than we are, and that's why they don't have to eat and they don't have to procreate. A level above us, far above us. Try to stay with me now. The Earth has a magnetic field, and without it, there would be no life on Earth. The Sun has a magnetic field. Without it, there would be no life on Earth. I maintain that the Sun is a living entity, dies every day and rises again metaphorically. So these are literally called celestial bodies. I would argue that the Moon falls within the Earth's atmosphere, well within the limits of the exosphere. And that's why the Moon appears as a dead rock. It's in the sky, not proper outer space. Whereas all the rest of these are in proper outer space. Understanding that the Bible labels the sky as the first heaven, and paradise, where God's throne is, a place we can't see, full of angels that are invisible to our human eyes, lest they come down here and interact, is the third heaven. The second heaven is labeled the expanse, which is the same word as space. But it's expanding, so the expanse is a better word. If you believe in the Bible, you believe that space is the second heaven, and that God calls all of the stars by name, and that they have jobs to do in reality, specifically in regards to the Earth. And scientifically, of course, in the most practical way imaginable, I can show you how just by shining in the night sky, the stars have influenced mankind in a great number of ways. Matter of fact, we are still obsessed, NASA, as obsessed as the Sumerians were about the Anunnaki and the stars. The same reason the Egyptians were obsessed with the heavens, and everyone else has always been. There's a reason. The forces of nature, you say. I say, the forces of nature say it isn't so, and I'll know you're a liar. Just like particles in an atom, so are celestial bodies in a solar system. And of course, an atom is not a solar system. One is tiny and one is super big, guys. And while science has moved away from materialism, mainly because light photons are not matter, and light is like all important here, we've moved from material to physical. Now they say everything is physical, and what they mean by that is that everything obeys the laws of physics. Understanding that things have different natures depending on how big they are, basically how much they weigh, basically. For instance, things on the atomic level are so small, gravity acts differently on this level than it does on that level. On this level, it's a field. On that level, it's a phenomena or a force of nature. That things with mass bend the fabric of time and space. So the sun has a different nature than a human being, but I would argue that the magnetic field of a man and the magnetic field of a sun show that they are the same structure relatively, one being scaled way up. I have a metabolism. I argue that the sun has a metabolism. I have to feed myself from external sources in my environment. The sun burns fuel that is inherent to itself. All that material, all that fuel is what makes it a sun to begin with. Has no need to procreate or pass on its progeny. It's gonna live forever. Has no need to eat. Its metabolism is inherent in its design. I argue that metabolism is evidence of consciousness, and to think that bacteria are alive and that stars are not is the most absurd thing I can imagine. Who are the gods then from every major pantheon, starting with Sumer? The funniest thing about the Fermi paradox to me is that it's completely false. We're looking out into heaven, into the expanse, trying to find life like it does on Earth, not realizing that this is Earth and that is heaven, and that life out there is not going to look the same as it looks here. That's a level above us. We're looking for another Earth out there. Where's the mankind? We're flying their ships around. Can't they hear us? Saying, well, there must be no aliens. Just what if? Just what if? We can see with our own eyes that heaven is teeming with life in every direction, and that maybe the aliens are just too big to communicate with us in the way that we're trying to communicate with them. Sillies. Try talking to a bacteria. Can he hear you? So let's talk about wandering stars, why planet means wanderer, and why it is exactly that they are wandering. A reference to their movement through the night sky through the years. The movement of the planets, which shine as brightly as the stars to our eyes, don't maintain the same dance as the rest of the stars. And of course, a modern astronomer will tell you, that's because they're in orbit in our solar system around our sun, whereas the rest of those stars are not. But instead that we are in orbit around the galactic center of the Milky Way, along with a bunch of those other stars, but that there's as many galaxies as there are stars in the Milky Way, each with billions of their own stars rotating around their own galactic centers, which are thought to be black holes at the center of those galaxies. It's just the spirals. I know, the ellipticals are spirals that collided with other spirals. Anyway, the planets draw out sacred geometry on the night sky, and that's very interesting, how that concept also scales. But the planets are named after the gods for a reason, namely because while their celestial bodies are indeed immortal, can't actually die. Change forms maybe. Well, as the story goes, they left those bodies to come down to the Earth, and had to. How are you gonna bring that big planet-sized body down to the Earth? You can't. You gotta leave that there if you wanna come down here. But how in the world could an entity leave its higher reality and come down to a lower one? Well, it's very similar to the way that you play Mario World or Fortnite or Call of Duty or Battlefield 6. You can't get your body in that machine to go to that server. That's a digital electronic lower reality, a simulation of this one that we're in. Now, if you want to go play in that world, you need an avatar. And we figured that out, and we can do that. Video games are a pretty good example. Imagine a situation where you put the VR goggles on, but then you can't take them off. You get stuck in there. Similar. Let me say it clearly. The gods from all the pantheons are heavenly beings, aliens, celestial bodies, that left those bodies in heaven to come down to the earth, this lower reality, and be gods down here. And of course, men and women who ruled over empires added themselves to this pantheon as reincarnations of these dead gods. Where did these guys go after God flooded the earth? He bound them in chains and threw them into hell. Their immortal bodies are still in the night sky. In heaven. Look, Mars is only mostly dead. To Blave. His soul, according to ancient texts, is wrapped up in chains and thrown into hell, waiting for the judgment. They weren't supposed to do all that. So I believe all the gods are real, Richard Dawkins. Some of them are fallen angels who are bound in chains and in hell. Where's that at? Well, we could talk about the quantum level of reality, all the way down into the singularity, if you will, the bottomless pit, hell. And men and women who added themselves to that. They don't need chains, their souls are in hell too. And just as the days of Noah were, so shall it be in the future here shortly, where all of this is gonna happen again. Celestial beings are gonna get thrown down to the earth this time. And this story's gonna go round again. But this time it'll be Satan, and they will worship him as God. They've been begging the gods to come back for 5,000 years.
5,000 years is time running up. Insane. Shout outs to Dead Hidden. If their celestial bodies are still in heaven, it sounds as if they sent their consciousness down here to earth. With that consciousness, the question is, what bodies did they inherit or begin to use of some sort? I feel like it has something to do with blood. I don't know. DNA and stuff like that, maybe. Very fascinating stuff. That's a whole new level of quantum thinking.
Do any of you remember the set of cards that predicted world events? This kind of became viral in 2020. But these set of cards were made in 1990 and they predicted major world events. I don't know if you can read that, but what does that say and what happened in 2020? And this also happened? And this, I mean, come on. There are two ways that we can go about looking at this. One is they're orchestrated. Everything was orchestrated. We are just watching a play. The world is a stage. Or time travel is real and we are altering things. So this was a discovery in the science realm. Evidence of negative time found in quantum physics experiment. I'm going to save you reading this article. Basically, it means, could time travel be possible? I don't know if you guys were following the 2020 exposure movement where all of the truths of what society is was leaking out, and I can't say too much because this video is going to get taken down. But the exposing of people in charge, the things that they do to the young people, like below the age of 10, people suddenly becoming missing, the consumption of the red liquid that comes out of us, particularly through the young people, all done by those in control, in power. And there was talks about a time machine that supposedly exists, and it is a technology that they have discovered a long time ago. And through this looking glass, they can see the outcomes of the world and they can dictate the outcomes of the world. So was it really an orchestrated event, or were they seeing the future? Now, the reason why I have Alice in the background is because a lot of spiritual people believe that this is, symbolism, occult symbolism. It's Freemasonic because of the checkerboard, and she wears an apron, and Freemasons wear an apron. And there's this one modern sequel of Alice in Wonderland. It's called Alice Through the Looking Glass, in which Alice has to time travel and reset a clock. Now I have to ask, how many of you have been experiencing deja vu constantly? I know I have. Reality feels like a dream. And so many of my clients who come to learn spirituality from me will say, why do I feel like life is a dream? Why do I keep getting deja vu? Maybe it's because of this. I'm just saying. Truth is stranger than fiction at times. And what we think is impossible, we're just limiting our own minds. How do we know what's exactly possible? Are we God? Are we the creator? We can't be that arrogant, right? Now, a lot of the conspiracies that have been coming out recently, especially in these past 4 years, have becoming eerily true. Especially with the whole P. Diddy situation and the things that they do. We now have to open up our minds to the possibility that this is actually real. These were all predictions. So that bodes the question, well, who's doing it? And why do they have so much power? What is this technology? Like I said, truth is stranger than fiction, and you probably don't want to hear me when I say this. But as a former atheist who has now fully accepted this truth, these are what you call the fallen angelics. The entities that are operating all these events that have all of these technologies, they are fallen angelics. They were higher dimensional beings, you can call them gods, that were kicked out of those higher dimensions because they were rebelling and they were becoming extremely selfish. Most of the 7 sins you can blame on them. Humanity was actually created to save these fallen angelics because we have something called ascension codes that run through our DNA given to us by the higher dimensional gods, if you will. And instead of treating humanity with respect, now this is why in the Bible it says Satan or Lucifer is jealous of humanity. They're jealous of the ascension codes. They want to go back home, but only on their terms. And this is why Earth is their playground. Earth is their kingdom. They don't want to leave this place because this is the only place they can have fun. And we are dragged into this unwillingly by them. Now, this is all I can say about the origins of humanity. If I say more, my account's going to get taken down. So if you want to learn more about the true angelic galactic origins of human beings, what these fallen angels want from us, what is their end goal, my book, Made in God's Image, is linked in my bio. Or you can book a one-on-one with me and I'll teach you everything that you need to know because they're cracking down on spiritual creators and this is extremely annoying at this point.
I totally get it. Shout out to Key.Guidance 999. Yeah, them cards are actually from 1995. It's ironic because the chat was just talking about this card game in the live stream with Explore the Weird. I think it's an amazing discovery how a photon can exit before entering. Like, yo, that's mind-bending. Literally.
Jerry Seinfeld loves pancakes. This video is for entertainment purposes only. Let's go.
Characters that have the consistency of young human flesh. It's spongy and life good. You got a guy with brightly colored undergarments, and you got soft human flesh in front of you. You're in a weird place. I'm looking forward to this. This is really, really going to be a great pancake.
What are you
talking about, Jerry? What do you mean by that? I mean, we all love pancakes. Put butter on it, syrup, maybe cinnamon. We'll get some home fries and eggs with it, right? Maybe some bacon and things like that. Maybe some toast. But what you compared it to had nothing to do with pancakes. Because pancakes are soft and fluffy. As a matter of fact, what diner was that? Stop playing with me, son. This video is for entertainment purposes only. I don't know what Jerry Seinfeld was talking about when he said that. But obviously he was just playing around because that's not true. Shut up! What is going on in there, guys? Jimmy Fallon, you knew about this whole time? Stop playing with me, son. It's not a game, right, guys? You know what time it is. Shut up! Why didn't you say anything, Jimmy? Why? You know why? Because they were just playing around, guys. They joke around. These are celebrities. These were two celebrities enjoying their breakfast, having a good time, discussing pancakes. Stop playing with me, son. It's not a game, right, guys? You know what time it is. Shut up! But I'll tell you one thing. If I ever see Jerry Seinfeld and I'm at a diner and I hear him talking like that while I'm eating my pancakes, we just playing around here, guys.
Bro, just to start talking like that, I would have told him shut the up. You know what I'm saying? I'm trying to eat here. Dog, the way he was just looking at it. Yo, man. Shout out to True Story 718. Yo, this is a prime example of why we call these people weirdos.
I noticed something when I saw this. This is at the Paris Louvre, and I was very, very interested in this piece right here, only because why would a bone-like structure or anything of this magnitude be on something that should be inorganic? Now right here you got the Venus de Milo, all right, and this is old. Like, this goes all the way back to, like, I don't know, 125 BC or something when they found this. They say they found it off the coast of Greece, and when they did find it off the coast of Greece, supposedly the arms were already missing. Another thing which we ignore, and I don't quite understand, because if you can look, that arm is cleanly severed off. It didn't erode off, and it's made out of Peruvian marble, as you can see here, marble. And you need a diamond tip saw to even cut marble. So how did you even cut that? And I don't like how they pulled up that guy chiseling with a stone as if somebody chiseled this huge statue. This right here, it's 6 feet 8 inches tall. 6 feet 8 inches tall. So you'd need a 7.5 foot, 8 foot block of marble to start with, and you can't make any mistakes. Clean cut arm, which they try and explain off like, oh yeah, the arms were just missing. The arms weren't missing. They cut these arms off these statues for a reason. This statue included. Then I came across this guy's work by the name of Signor Sagato. And let's just read this here, right? At the time acquired, the means of petrifying animals so perfectly as at present, and petrify and petrification, he warns that he uses them in a new literary sense in duration resembling and approaching that of stone, not a petrification in the scientific sense. As you read here, this guy had a petrification process where, look, even the spots upon the skin remain the same, they remain natural, not one drop. Where they continued fixed as freshly and lively, birds do not lose a feather, reptiles don't lose a scale, both preserve their hue. Animals, even the eye still glistens. So this guy figured out a way to petrify things. Look, a female bosom, white, the natural appearance, even to the fine down of the skin, the roundness of the breasts. This guy here had a method he used to petrify things. As you can see here, Sagato's discoveries.
his countrymen. He had already acquired some celebrity in Europe from his admirable maps of America. So this guy was pretty famous for what he did. As you can see here, he basically was a very, very well-known individual. Right here, look, signo cigado as well, analogy, insects, all animals prepared for natural history is enabled to answer. Besides the high degree of anatomical knowledge, great skill and preparation, right? Which bodies and parts of animals are preserved, maintaining their natural color and exhibiting peculiar appearances incident to certain pathological conditions. Look, besides, they acquire a hardness which may be called stony. Look, and they resist corrosion of the air, of humidity, and of worms, right? This guy was petrifying cadavers or bodies, and once he petrified them, they remained that way. They didn't decay any further, air didn't affect them, and water didn't affect them. He was petrifying them. These are the breasts. Look at that. Resulted in petrification. Somehow he successfully replaced the organic tissue with mineral while preserving the original color, shape, texture, even the cellular structure of the original material. Look at those titties. You wouldn't think that was a petrified cadaver. You would think that was stone, marble, wouldn't you? Exactly. Let's keep cooking. He also petrified a kidney. This is a petrified dead person. Look at the eye. Look at everything on there, right? This is the condition he got out of a dead person that petrified and just stayed like this forever. And that got me thinking. If he could petrify this dead individual and have them like that forever, then couldn't you just do it to a live person and animate them in that fashion? Petrification, the process by which organic matter exposed to minerals over a long period is turned into a stony substance. He didn't need a long period. He was doing this instantly. And that brings me to these statues. Let's just take a look here. You got 1504, you got 1624, you got 1753, you got 1850. All right, let me tell you what you don't have. You don't have a diamond tip saw. To cut marble, you need a wet saw with a diamond tip blade for straight cuts or an angle grinder for curves or smaller cuts. Ensure always keep the blade wet to reduce dust and heat. Prepare the marble by measuring, marking, securely clamping it before. All of these things, right? This equipment you do not have. So you have to ask yourself, without that equipment, how are you making these out of marble? You're looking at marble here. This isn't plaster. This is marble. Marble. And I don't care if you got the best diamond tip tool of all. This is just out of this world. How are you getting this done here? The only way this could possibly work is if these are actual people that are really petrified. Look, if not marvelous as it may seem, he had discovered a chemical process by which he could actually petrify in a very short time. Every animal cell is preserved permanently and with minute accuracy, its form and internal texture, and in a state of such stony hardness that it could be sawed into slabs and elegantly polished. He had in his way formed a museum of various animals, frogs, fish, toads, snakes. A great variety of parts of the human body in a natural and diseased state. In my presence, he threw the human liver, lungs, heart, and other parts thus petrified about the floor with perfect impunity and without the least injury being done to them. They were completely petrified. This extraordinary man must have inherited the magic shield of Perseus, that which the snaky tresses of the Gorgon Medusa's head enabled her to convert everything to stone. Now, check this story out. This I found odd. Look, Segator, he went to the United States to demonstrate his work among the surgeons and the people in the country. Segator was reluctant. Mott wrote that Segator's demands were too exorbitant to be complied with, right? Dejected, returned to the United States. Look, 3 weeks later, he received a letter informing him that Segator had suffered a sudden and violent inflammation of the lungs and had died shortly after he had left France. Segator had taken to the grave. The secret of his technique, and despite numerous studies and attempts to imitate his methods, remained mysterious. So this man went to the United States, demonstrated to these surgeons his petrification method, and 3 weeks later he mysteriously died from lung inflammation. And we all just know you don't suddenly die from lung or respiratory anything. When you have a lung issue, it's ongoing. It happens, emphysema, lung cancer. It's debilitating. It happens over time. He just suddenly died after he left the United States and showed them this petrification. I'm calling bullshit. I'm seeing missing arms missing off of all these statues, and they're cleanly cut off. 1875, still cut off. Right there, still cut off. With that said, I'm not buying that anybody sculpted these. Look at their facial expressions. I'm under the impression that somebody back then, just like Segato, had a petrification method and they were using it on living human beings. But when the mind's blind, the eyes can't see.
So it's like Medusa was real. Yo, this is one of the craziest ones I've seen. Shout outs to Piper Miller, aka Damian Michaels. Petrified human statues. Makes you wonder if the art is petrified human beings. And who is it that's being petrified?
It comes up every day. I'm going to take you to where it starts. It starts around at 3 o'clock every day. It comes up from here. It goes up there. Watch the timestamp. Every day. Boom, an explosion comes. Every day.
And that's a wrap. Hope you enjoyed the deep dive. If you haven't already, please consider to give it a like and subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to hit that notification bell. Shout outs to all the reactors. Thanks again. Till next time.